Welcome everybody to our channel. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we have an incredible guest who's going to teach us all we need to know about growing your business in retail. So if you have any questions about retail, if you want to know how to build a retail business, then our guest today, WIzz, that's her real name, is going to tell us all about it. So, well, let's get going. WIzz, would you mind perhaps starting by telling the audience listening a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my name is Selvey. I'm the founder of a business brand and retail strategy agency called Wizardco, and we work with global retailers, established brands, investors, and also brand founders as well. So people that are looking to scale their business. I spent 12 amazing years being a buyer at Selfridges. I started in fashion. I worked in menswear, beauty. I was accessories buyer and lifestyle, and then I was head of beauty buying. So I've worked across a lot of different categories, large brands, small brands, kind of always looking ahead at what's happening in retail because you have to as a buyer. I've also sat on the other side of the table and was a sales director for Cowshed and Soho Home. And I've worked with some big businesses such as Ocado, helped launch Beauty on the Next website, Fenwick, Dermalogica, and yeah, I also have online education to help, I suppose, stars of the future in independent brands scale. So I know a lot about retail. I speak on the topic quite a lot about retail and consumer trends. So I'm often doing events as well. So do come.
Well, how did you end up being your own boss?
Well, I loved buying. I loved being at Selfridges. I loved working with lots of different brands. But actually, I went then and worked on the brand side, and I just really missed, I suppose, the variety of working with different types of brands. What I realised is, having been a buyer and working with all those amazing brands, and actually you were kind of helping them trade in one of the most, I suppose, competitive playing fields there was, which often was like the Selfridges Beauty Hall, for example. So yeah, that's why I like working with different businesses.
And so was it just one day you woke up and said, that's it, I'm doing it? Or was it a gradual process? How did you make that leap?
Getting made redundant helped, but it was something that I was looking to change what I was doing anyway. So I suppose that gave me a bit of time to explore what I was going to do next. I'd kind of looked at different jobs, different companies I liked, reviewed, yeah, I suppose what I enjoyed, what I didn't, networked, connected with a lot of my connections that I'd made over the years. Yeah, and it's just evolved. I mean, it feels like it evolves every month. I think being an entrepreneur, it does, which is actually what I find so exciting because I enjoy learning and developing.
That's a great attitude. So, well, look, we asked quite a lot of our community that we managed to reach before you came on today about what they'd like to know, and they've given us some questions. So before we go to the audience who's here and get them to ask their questions, one question we had was straight into the deep end, really. How do you establish an innovative brand? And maybe just mic me the other side. I think I'm coming through on your Discord.
Sorry?
Can you just mute me on Discord? I think it's still coming through. I can hear it like an echo of my voice on the end, which will
Okay.
frustrate people no end if on when they listen back to this later. They'll be like, hearing Simon's voice. He's annoying enough the first time.
I'm just going to come out of it and I'll come back in afterwards.
1 second, folks. Slightly
that helps.
So there should be, if you see your name in the bottom left-hand corner, there should be a little mic. Can you see it?
I've just exited Discord. I've just closed the program.
Okay, fine. Okay, no problem. We can go back to it at the end when we do the Q&A. No problem.
Yeah.
No problem. I might just start it again so that we can edit the intro a bit. So Welcome everybody to our event today. We'll be talking about how to grow your retail business. And we have an expert who's worked at Selfridges and helped all sorts of incredible brands do just that, and now has her own agency, an incredible agency that's going to help you do it. So Wiz, welcome to our broadcast today. Perhaps we can kick straight off with one of the questions we had from one of our community. And they asked, how do you establish an innovative brand?
I think it's $1 million question, or £1 million, I suppose, and what everybody asks. But it's kind of a combination of different things. There isn't kind of a one answer to it, but I think the key point is really to define what your point of difference is to the market. I think it's what I love about the retail industry, and I suppose just the business world in general, is that it's easier than ever to launch a new business, to launch a new brand, and it's easier than ever to connect with customers. But as a result, there's more brands out there than ever. So I think it's how do you really define what your point of difference is, and how do you clearly communicate that to a customer so they can understand very quickly whether that's right to you, right for them. And so it's that USP in the market, in the category that you're potentially trading in or you're going to be launching in, but also how that aligns with consumer trends as well. I think we see a lot of brands that appear to have just like popped out of nowhere. But I think the reality of this is actually they're aligning to the way kind of customer behavior is shifting. So they people see kind of a bit of a gap in the way people are acting, behaving, shopping, consuming things, and kind of whatever, eating, putting makeup on, wearing things, whatever that may be. And actually it's launching something that's kind of a bit of ahead of the curve as well. So it can be quite, I think, challenging to identify what that is, but I think a lot of founders find a gap in the market. And then it's how you continue to evolve that as well, because it isn't about standing still. And I think that's where you see a lot of the established brands that start to lose market share as well. And this is something I help a lot of brands with on a one-to-one basis as well, particularly when they've been trading for some time and they need to adapt, or they're kind of feeling a bit like, wow, there's lots of brands that have popped up around me, and how do I evolve? So I do actually have a kind of a guide to this on my website as well if you go to the blog section. So if anybody wants a bit more detail about how they can apply that to their business, I'd go and check that one out.
It's interesting. I've got quite a few friends that work in different retail businesses, and one of them works at, and I don't want to get them into trouble, but works at Body Shop. And they were saying that it takes 3 years to innovate a new product there. And it's a really, I mean, I guess probably quite a slow turnaround. So do you think there's any brands out there that are doing it right? Is there anyone that springs to mind as like, hold them up and say, this is an innovative brand? Is there anyone that jumps to mind?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I think the Body Shop is a super interesting one, because you think how relevant they were and ahead of the times when they launched in the 70s. And actually, I think it was super interesting because it was around for a long time, and then the L'Oreal group bought it, but they didn't know how to innovate and how to adapt it to the current times. And actually, they ended up selling the business. So that kind of USP and how that is relevant to what's happening in the world and what people want kind of is really shifting. And I think their new owners have been able to adapt to that quite well. And I suppose it's often easier to associate with brands that everyone recognises, but I suppose brands like Charlotte Tilbury, I know all of the big makeup brands wondered what happened, like where did she suddenly come from and take all this market share? But she really adapted to what was happening in the market, which was everyone was Googling how to create a glamorous smoky eye on YouTube. So she kind of created a solution to be able to teach people to do that, because the reality is people were Googling how to do it and ended up trying it and looking like a panda. So she created a very simple solution to be able to solve this problem and teach people how to do it. And the way kind of she merchandised her kits, her sets to teach people with 10 different looks, and you just pick the one you look like and we will teach you how to do this, was a very innovative, simple, and sounds very obvious, but nobody else was doing that really, way of doing it. And also positioning herself as a digital first brand, but also using retail to leverage her D2C business as well, which is kind of, I know it's kind of one of the questions that somebody was interested in knowing is, I think there's this big thing about, should I be focusing on D2C or retail or a hybrid? So I still passionately think about it's about getting a balance of both.
Yeah, and someone's just asking right now on TikTok. They wanted to understand, how do you get your USP across? Is there a particular method you think works best?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to get across quickly, and particularly when in an era of TikTok where everyone's consuming things super quickly, I talk a lot about having an elevator pitch. So, what's that one line, that one phrase where people can understand very quickly what your brand is about? And I see a lot of people that are creating these as very fact-based, which is, and again, being very flippant here, but I'm a female founded sustainable natural skincare brand. There's hundreds of thousands of those brands out there now that are doing that. So how do you differentiate? But so it's about creating a very short story, an emotional connection about the problem that you're solving for the customer, instead of the fact-based phrase, that so people can quickly understand what that is. And if you do head to kind of the Wizardco website, there is a guide on how to do this and some questions, and some things for you to review, because it can be the hardest part of developing your business, and also the hardest part to maintain as the market changes as well.
Interesting. And how do you increase sales and make revenue? Do you think is it a similar formula? That one line of delivery is what you need, or what's your view on that?
Well, that's will capture attention, but actually it's about building trust with customers, building validation, and nobody sees, well, very rarely somebody sees a brand once and purchases it. So it's how do you get seen and heard in multiple different places? Because once people start to recognise your brand, your business, they're then going to kind of start to take an interest, maybe start to look at follow you on social media, maybe go to your website, maybe start picking up your product in a store. But they need to kind of be seeing that in lots of different places. And again, is kind of something that I see a challenge as brands are scaling. It's they can kind of get stuck just working on a couple of areas of the business, and that's also quite hard as you're building a brand as well, because you're trying to do everything. But yeah, really trying to get your brand out there in different places, and with kind of collaborations and partnerships which can give validation, which could be press, it could be retailers, it could be collaborations, it could be kind of different platforms. So it's all about building that, I suppose, momentum, and then all of a sudden that's where you suddenly see these brands where it's like, wow, where's that brand suddenly coming from? I keep hearing and seeing about it everywhere. And I think we've all got that, I suppose, that knowledge where we think, oh yeah, I've just seen a brand in lots of places, I'm going to go and check it out. So I always think about the last brand that you did that with, that you bought, that you suddenly heard about, and where had you seen it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like I'm quite one dimensional personally. Like Apple seems to always get me no matter where I am, whatever. I look at my table right now, and every single device on my table is an Apple. So they've correct, but they don't really have a one-liner, do they? I don't really think about them in the context that you've just described. I mean, I always think about
Well,
their 1984 ad, but
yeah, but they've positioned themselves as cool and for creatives, and I suppose a lot of people want to be in that camp. So they've created it as a positioning of aspiration, as a luxury product, rather than a functional computer or a functional phone or a functional laptop. So that's been their positioning, to be able to kind of, I suppose, stay ahead of the game.
yeah, think differently. I guess that was their line, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Like, be
yeah,
different, buy what everyone else is buying, i.e., don't buy an IBM, or
completely.
Microsoft
And it's the same
product.
with Tesla. It's selling an aspiration, a dream, a battery, and it's trying to communicate something differently. And I always think it's interesting looking at other categories to the brand that you're trading your product in, because often I think that's where you can get inspiration if you apply a different way of doing things, to your brand in a category that doesn't normally play in that arena or in that way, because these are the rules and this is how we market a beauty brand and this is the way we launch a fashion collection. It's like, well, why not try and flip that around and do something different?
It's almost counterintuitive, isn't it, to say, like, even Apple, if it would say we're gonna be seen as the creative brand, it almost sounds like you're trying to make yourself niche, which is the opposite to what a lot of marketing people try to do, right? It's like we want everyone to buy
Yeah,
this product, you know, but somehow by owning a niche, you create that aspiration, which then makes it go mass market,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
everyone is
And what
scared
I
of
mean,
creating a niche.
yeah. Yeah, everyone's scared to be too drilled down, right? But actually, it's magic, isn't it? I mean, even dare I say it, because I'm not a fan, but Facebook initially starting out at universities, and that kind of being the product you have if you're in the university ecosystem, and that then,
Yeah.
of course, stretching out into the whole world. But starting off in knowing that particular market that you're servicing and the mindset of that market, right? But it's very hard for marketeers, isn't it? I'm sure you had that challenge with your customers, and is everyone wants the whole world to use their products, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But actually, you're better, yeah, like niching down and kind of, and I think one of the biggest opportunities is for brands is to think about user-generated content. How do you get just your existing customers to talk about your brand, to rave about it online? Because I think that's a super valuable and more profitable way to scale. So yeah, because people can recognize someone else that might be in the same situation as them, might have the same problem, or potentially they can look at them and they look similar to them, or they can resonate with them for some reason. And again, that brings that authenticity and trust, which kind of might get somebody to convert sooner than if it's validation from, yeah, I suppose bigger external partners that they can't relate to.
So if you were to start a retail business today, I guess two questions. One is, what is the future of retail in your view,
Hmm.
and what steps would you take if you were starting a business today? A lot of our community have actually started a business, and a lot of people want to start a business. But what would you think about first, and what steps would you take to build a retail business today?
Yeah, I mean, what I will say is retail is not dead. If you read the front page of newspapers, of course you're going to think that. But do we believe anything the media is saying anymore? It's all hype, and well, not hype in a good way. It's yeah, it's all shock tactics. And the retailers that have fallen to the wayside in the last kind of 12 months have been the ones that have been in trouble for a long time. They didn't innovate. Topshop, Philip Green famously said he didn't think the internet would be a thing. So what happened to that business? They didn't invest quick enough. House of Fraser and Debenhams were discounting all the time, but they've just lost their footing. So of course, kind of they've fallen to the wayside. But there's so much amazing retail out there, and of course we saw a surge of digital in lockdown. But actually, we've seen footfall go back to pre-pandemic levels. Already, which is amazing. And it's just a retail reassortment. It's just a change of where people are shopping, what they're shopping for, and why. So I think if you are thinking about launching a retail brand, keep up to date with retail news, what's happening in the industry, find out what's happening with trends. I've got a trend event happening on Thursday. I talk regularly on the topic. And yeah, just keep up to date with what's happening in the market. So retail is still really, really important because actually it gives validation to customers as well. Because if you're seen on the shelves of or digital or physical of kind of a big player, whether it's kind of Selfridges or Next or Boots or ASOS, it kind of gives real credentials and trust to customers as well. But you have to be making sure you're building your brand at the same time, because to launch with those stores, you need to have traction already, you need to have brand awareness, and people need to recognize your brand as well. So I believe it's still a hybrid of D2C and retailers. So get going on your D2C. If you haven't launched yet, start building your social media following before you've even launched. I've seen some great successes that way. And yeah, pitch to some large retailers. Don't go to too many small ones. It can be a huge time drain and you don't get the revenue for the reward. But positioning yourself with some really large retailers can really catapult your brand forward because it gives you the brand awareness with a huge amount of customers that quite organically some of those will come to your D2C business and kind of fall in love with the brand. It can take a long time to get in stocks in those retailers. It's a tough gig. Again, I talk a lot about how to pitch to buyers. So if you do want some more information, kind of keep up to date with kind of following me on social, because you'll see an event no doubt soon about that. So yeah, I think it's about having a hybrid. It's very hard to just do a purely D2C business. You see companies that say they're purely D2C, but they've had a huge amount of investment or funding up front, or they might not be profitable yet. So yeah, it's all about working out a distribution strategy that's scalable. So if I was starting a brand,
I never really understand.
I would definitely look at a hybrid approach.
Sorry, there's a slight delay on the Riverside. So what would you do if you were starting a brand? What did you say? You go initially on social, I guess, right? Build up the social following. Would that be kind of step one?
Yeah, before I even launched, I would be building a social channel, and would be talking about the problem that I'm going to be solving for customers. So that's kind of linked to what your USP is, really. So start gathering that audience of kind of how you're going to, whatever that thing is, and yeah, because if you'll start getting feedback and engagement and saying, well, do you have this problem? I've got this problem, or what do you think about this, or what do you think's needed, or what do you use at the moment? And there'll be a huge amount of your market research involved in that as well. And then when you do launch your website, your email list, or start building your email list as well, it means that when you launch your product, you will have an audience straight away rather than starting from ground zero, which I see a lot of people doing. And then, yeah, I would include large retailers in a distribution strategy as well.
I can't believe we've got this far when talking about the future of retail, and we're not talking about the metaverse. I mean, it feels like a lot of brands are moving into that space and opening up stores and doing all sorts of things. Do you think that's just PR, and it's, or do you see it as absolutely a legitimate future retail ecosystem?
I think it completely depends on the brand that you are and whether you need to be considering it yet. It's the big luxury players that are kind of working in that arena, and I think that they're facing huge challenges at the moment for a number of reasons. Is people are really redefining and re-questioning what their definition of luxury is, particularly in the West. So there's certainly been a decline in sales for those guys. A lot of them have been very slow moving to digital anyway, let alone, I mean, Chanel has only had an Instagram account for, I don't know, 6 years or something. So they've historically been very slow to that arena. And a lot of those big brands, their market share is being taken by independent brands. Again, hugely exciting. But they're having to, as a result, they're struggling to connect with the new generation of consumers. So for them, this is a way to do it. And they've got the money to throw at that. So the money and the time, I suppose, because there's a whole time element of a team to be able to do that or to outsource it. So again, I think is it relevant to your brand, to your customer? Is your demographic in the metaverse now? Will they ever be? And I suppose in the future, as we work out what the metaverse is, yes, it's the future of the internet, but I've seen one of the big four on McKinsey to forecast the value of the metaverse in 10 years, and it was something like 10% of all sales will come through that, but that's still only 10% in 10 years. So there's a lot of headlines about it, there's a lot of talk about it. It's exciting because it's the future, but yeah, define who your customer is, and is it right for you, and is your arena of brands that you're trying to compete with in it, and is it worth investing your time and energy at this stage? And if you've got the time and the money and the excess, then yeah, dabble.
Yeah, well, Amazon was there early, but they still had to, survive for 10 years during a dot-com bust and all the rest of it. I think it's going to be a similar process with the metaverse, really. I mean, there's not enough traffic there. It's still quite niche. The equipment to access some of it is expensive. So I think it's a bit like the internet in the beginning, but definitely, I guess, kind of a fun new ecosystem to play with. But I guess it's we can move over to Discord and perhaps take some questions from people. If anyone has any questions, you can put up your hand now. But just before we do that, I just wanted to ask you, if you feel like, I mean, you just mentioned there's something that I do. I also believe, but maybe I wonder if I'm getting old, but I do believe that retail isn't dead, and I hope I'm just not losing
Yeah.
touch, because I still
No,
like
you're
going to
not.
retail shops and buying stuff. But I do see, rents are ridiculously expensive, even now. I mean, Oxford Street, for example, or any prime location, it's crazy rent still. Those things haven't come down, and it just doesn't feel viable a lot of the time for people to open up a retail space and then staff it and rates, and I wonder. I guess it does seem to me that it's quite a difficult moment in retail. And do you think it's experiences that are going to turn around retail, or is it landlords getting more reasonable, or are landlords going to have to open up their own shops in those spaces to fill them? Or the government's plan is to turn a lot of high streets into residential accommodation. That doesn't feel like they believe that the high street retail, for example, is going to survive. What's your final view on that? Just digging a little deeper in that point before we move to questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still the very amazing department stores that work well. There's still destination shopping and malls. I think things have become less London centric, which I'm really excited about. And yeah, there's definitely a future. There's pop-up shops. I think yeah, rent is going to have to come down. There's going to have to some kind of reevaluation of what's happening there. But I think we also look at thinking about what's the future of electric cars. Where are people going to go and plug in those cars, and what they're going to do when they're waiting for them to charge and shop, probably. So I think it's hybrid of, yeah, the homes, definitely the housing, probably freelance office space for sure, in the kind of the way people are going to start working in different ways. Yeah, and it's going to be convenience. So it's going to be all your Amazon collection drop-off points, and let's just make it really, really easy hubs, which are going to be where people want to go because they can do lots of different things at the same time. And as well, they're going to want to browse, touch and feel things. So yeah, it's going to be hybrids of different things.
Again, I mean, I always think like when Toys R Us closed down, you don't have to look very far to a formula that would have worked, like Hamley Toys. I mean, it's still busting when you go there, when it's open, of course, for COVID. But like, even Apple stores, you can buy an apple online. You don't need to go to the store, but they're always packed, right? You just create, it's
Yeah.
almost like a tribal sense, like the Apple stores are built like churches, someone told me once. They're built like shrines to the whole movement. And yeah, it is obvious what you can do to kind of counteract the concept that people want to order everything at home. But it is tough competition, because even myself, I wanted to buy shoes the other day, and instead of going to the Nike shop, it just feels like a pain. You just click online what you like, and it arrives the next day. It's definitely if you want to keep physical retail alive, you have to create an experience, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Yeah,
Nike are doing a great job as well, and they've really refined their distribution
they
strategy
do.
as well. They've really pulled back.
Yeah, although again, I actually did go to the store to buy my shoes, and they don't have your size. You like go all the way there, and they're like, "Oh, you have to order it online," is what they said to me. I'm like, trying to keep the retail alive, but when the two don't connect, it's kind of funny. But
Yeah.
look, let's move over to Discord and take the questions from the community there. And I'm going to thank you so much for sharing your knowledge here. We will be putting this recording up live on all the different channels that the Purposeful Project operate. So if you have any questions for WIzz but aren't in the live session, do leave the comments down below wherever you're listening to this, and we will get the answers from WIzz later. So but thank you, WIzz, for allowing us to record your knowledge.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.